Chapter 1. The setting: a quiet suburban Saturday. February 2, 2008, began like any other chilly Saturday in Tinley Park, Illinois. Located in Cook County and recognized as one of America's best places to raise a family by Business Week just a year earlier, Tinley Park was not the kind of place where residents feared for their lives. It was a peaceful community of about 58,000 residents, a blend of young families, retirees, and middle-class professionals. Crime rates were low, and the most common disturbances were shoplifting or the occasional traffic violation. The Brookside Marketplace, a large outdoor shopping plaza on 191st Street just off Harlem Avenue, was a relatively new retail development. It was filled with major chains and retail outlets, including Target, PetSmart, Starbucks, and Lane Bryant, the latter situated in a quieter corner of the plaza. There were no immediate indicators of danger. The police presence in the area was sparse, simply because it wasn't needed. The Lane Bryant store was a clean, well-lit location, designed to serve plus-sized women with affordable, fashionable apparel. The walls were lined with mannequins dressed in spring catalogs, though winter sales dominated the showroom floor that February. Soft lighting and calming music played in the background as employees readied the store for the weekend rush. The dressing rooms had just been cleaned. Promotional signage was in place for the upcoming Valentine's Day deals. It was just another day. The store opened its doors at precisely 10 a.m. Manager Rhoda McFarland, recently transferred from Kentucky, was on duty. A dedicated employee with strong Christian values, Rhoda had moved to Illinois to be closer to her fiancé. She was a natural leader, well-liked by staff, organized and level-headed. That morning she was joined by a part-time sales associate whose name remains undisclosed by authorities to this day for her protection. This employee, a young woman, was just beginning what she thought would be another uneventful Saturday shift. Customers started to trickle in within minutes of opening. Like most weekend shoppers, they browsed at a leisurely pace, chatting with staff, flipping through racks of sweaters and jackets, or trying on clothes in the back fitting rooms. There was no hint that this ordinary scene was about to descend into one of the most horrifying mass murders in Illinois history. Temperatures outside hovered in the mid-20s. It had snowed lightly overnight. Shoppers bundled in coats moved through the plaza, sipping coffee or crossing parking lanes with shopping bags in hand. No one noticed anything unusual. No one suspected that inside the Lane Bryant store, an individual was about to enter with a gun and murderous intent. This sleepy retail Saturday morning would soon become infamous, a tragedy that would reverberate through the community for decades, confound investigators and destroy the sense of security the residents of Tinley Park once took for granted. Chapter 2. The victims arrive. The hours leading up to the massacre were filled with normal, even mundane moments for the women who would soon become victims of one of the most senseless crimes in Illinois history. Each had her own reason for stopping by the Lane Bryant store that morning. Some out of routine, others looking for sales, and one simply beginning another shift. They had no way of knowing that their lives were converging toward a moment that would abruptly end 5 of them and scar another forever. Rhoda McFarland, 42. The manager. Rhoda McFarland was the store manager and the anchor of the day's operations. Born and raised in Joliet, Illinois, Rhoda had deep Midwestern roots. She was a woman of strong faith, deeply involved in her church, and known among friends and family for her warm, uplifting personality. In 2007, she had relocated from Kentucky back to Illinois to take care of her ailing mother and to be closer to her fiancé, a man she hoped to marry within the year. Described by her coworkers as responsible, calm, and generous, Rhoda was the kind of manager who treated staff like family. She showed up early that morning around 9:30 a.m. to open the store and handle prep work. She ensured the registers were balanced, displays arranged, the backroom organized, and sale signs properly posted. It was a typical day for her, and she had no indication it would be her last. The unnamed employee, the sole survivor. The second person in the store that morning was a young part-time employee who arrived shortly before the store opened. Her name has never been publicly released for her protection, but she is the sole survivor of the shooting. She had worked at the Lane Bryant location for some time and was familiar with the routines and the quiet pace of Saturday mornings. She began helping Rhoda with minor tasks, checking stock, tidying up, and welcoming the first customers. She had no reason to believe that this shift would end in a life-and-death struggle. She would later become the only living witness to the killer's face, actions, and demeanor. Carrie Hudek-Chiso, 33. The devoted mother. Carrie Hudek-Chiso was a nurse, a devoted wife, and a mother of two from nearby Frankfort, Illinois. She had taken a rare moment for herself that Saturday, heading out to do a bit of shopping while her husband, Tony, stayed home with their children. Carrie was known for her kindness, calm spirit, and nurturing heart, traits that made her an excellent healthcare worker and a loving mom. She entered Lane Bryant just before 10:45 a.m., likely planning to browse briefly before returning home. Surveillance cameras from adjacent stores captured her car pulling into the lot. Inside, she moved between racks and may have exchanged pleasantries with Rhoda or the associate before disaster struck. Connie Woolfolk, 37. The caring mother of two. Connie Woolfolk from Flossmoor was also a mother of two. She had a passion for fashion and loved shopping at stores like Lane Bryant. Friends described her as someone who could light up a room with her laugh. She had recently moved back in with her mother while she saved up for her own place, and she had been working hard to build a stable, loving life for her sons. That morning, Connie left her home to go shopping, enjoying a rare break in her routine. She parked her car in the shared lot and strolled into Lane Bryant sometime between 10:30 and 10:45 a.m. Like Carrie, she had no idea that a predator was about to turn a shopping trip into a slaughterhouse. Jennifer Bishop, 34. The dedicated professional. Jennifer Bishop was from South Bend, Indiana, but was visiting her family in the Chicago area that weekend. She had a long background in the healthcare field and was known as a driven, compassionate woman. Jennifer was fiercely independent and proud of her accomplishments. She was believed to be in town for a short visit and likely stopped into Lane Bryant while out running errands. Her trip to the store was likely unplanned, a spur-of-the-moment detour on her way to meet family or return home. Tragically, it would be the last time anyone would see her alive. Sarah Safransky, 22. The young dreamer. Sarah Safransky was the youngest of the victims, just 22 years old. She had recently graduated from college with a degree in psychology and was exploring graduate school options. She had a gentle, thoughtful nature, and those close to her said she was passionate about helping others and had dreams of becoming a counselor or therapist. Sarah had stopped into Lane Bryant that morning during a casual day out. She may have been looking for professional clothes for future job interviews. Surveillance records from nearby stores show she arrived just before 10:45 a.m., parking near the storefront entrance. The fatal convergence. By approximately 10:45 a.m., all 6 women were inside the store. 2 were employees, 1 a manager, the other a part-time associate. The remaining 4 were customers. The music played quietly through the speakers. Conversations were casual, warm. The winter sunlight spilled through the storefront windows, giving no hint of the imminent bloodshed. There was no visible sign of fear, no warnings, no alarms. Just an ordinary Saturday morning among working women, students, mothers, and professionals. Unbeknownst to them, they had been selected at random by a man who would soon bind, terrify, and ultimately kill 5 of them. Their only connection was timing and place. Strangers thrown together in a brief window of time that would seal their fate forever. Chapter 3. The gunman enters. At approximately 10:45 a.m., the ordinary peace of the Lane Bryant store was shattered. A man entered the store, a single quiet figure stepping through the front doors into the softly lit boutique. Witnesses from neighboring businesses recalled seeing a tall black man dressed in dark clothing walk into the store without any visible sense of urgency. Nothing about his entry suggested what was about to unfold. He was not yelling, running, or causing a scene. His presence, at least at first, appeared unremarkable. But hidden beneath his loose, dark winter coat was a handgun. His purpose was not to shop or browse. He had come with violent intent. Appearance and clothing. Descriptions from the sole surviving victim, who observed the man closely, would later offer chilling and specific details. The gunman was approximately 6 feet tall, possibly a little shorter. African American, with thick braided cornrows that extended several inches down his neck. He had one braid decorated with 4 light green beads near the end, a distinct, almost haunting detail that would remain the most visually identifying feature. Facial hair, described as having a slight beard or goatee, possibly a thin mustache. His build was medium, not heavy, not lanky, possibly athletic. He was dressed in a black waist-length winter coat, dark jeans and a hat. Some reports mention a knit cap or baseball cap, possibly with a logo. Most disturbingly, he carried a small caliber handgun, believed to be .40 caliber, later confirmed through ballistic analysis. It was hidden when he entered, but it didn't remain that way for long. The shift from calm to chaos. When the gunman entered, the store had been quiet. The part-time employee greeted him as she would any customer, asking if he needed assistance. He didn't respond in a normal fashion. His tone was cold, direct. Within moments, his demeanor changed drastically. He brandished the weapon, revealing it with smooth precision. There was no announcement, no grand declaration. Just sudden, terrifying action. He ordered everyone in the store, employees and customers alike, to the back of the store, near the employee break room and storage area. The back area of the Lane Bryant store was relatively compact. It included a small break room, an employee restroom, a narrow hallway, and a storage room for merchandise. He forced the 6 women, Rhoda McFarland, the unnamed part-time associate, Carrie Chisso, Connie Woolfolk, Jennifer Bishop, and Sarah Safransky, into this confined space at gunpoint. Binding the victims. Inside the storage or break area, the gunman used duct tape to bind the women's hands and cover their mouths. Some reports suggest he may have had them lie face down, though this detail has never been officially confirmed. His control of the situation was unnervingly calm. He moved with purpose, not frenzy. At this stage, robbery appeared to be his motive. The gunman forced manager Rhoda McFarland to open the safe, which she did without resistance. He also removed items from the women's purses. According to the sole survivor, he was very specific, rifling through personal belongings, demanding valuables, but never showing overt panic. Authorities would later confirm that only a small amount of cash was taken, an amount so minimal that it raised serious doubts about robbery being the true or sole motive. Rhoda McFarland's 911 call, a final act of bravery. In an incredible act of courage, while the gunman was distracted, possibly as he rifled through belongings or moved between victims, Rhoda McFarland managed to place a 911 call. She used her cell phone, dialing emergency services from the back of the store. The dispatcher heard chaos, a whispering female voice and frantic breathing. The dispatcher was able to make out that a robbery was in progress and that a gunman was inside the store. The call lasted only moments, just long enough to alert police, but it was cut off mid-sentence, likely when the gunman discovered what Rhoda had done. Authorities would later describe her action as heroic, potentially saving the life of the one surviving witness by prompting a rapid police response. The sudden turn to murder. Shortly after the 911 call was placed, and within minutes of his arrival, the gunman's behavior shifted violently. For reasons still unclear to this day, he made the chilling decision to execute the women. He fired his weapon at point-blank range, striking all 6 victims. 5 were killed instantly or died within minutes. The 6th, the unnamed employee, was wounded but survived by playing dead, lying completely still in a pool of blood among the lifeless bodies of her co-workers and customers. Each of the victims was shot in the head or neck area. The precision and brutality suggested not just panic but intent to kill. This was no longer a robbery. This was now a mass execution. The killer, having completed his horrifying act, fled the store moments later. The total time he spent inside Lane Bryant is estimated to be around 15 to 20 minutes, with most of the events unfolding in the final 5 to 10 minutes. But what exactly triggered him to move from robbery to cold-blooded murder? Was it Rhoda's 911 call? Did he panic? Or had he intended to kill from the very beginning? These questions would haunt investigators for years to come. Chapter 4. The Aftermath and Police Response. At approximately 10:49 a.m., a 911 dispatcher at the Tinley Park Police Department received a call that would send shockwaves through the entire community. On the line was a terrified woman, Rhoda McFarland, the Lane Bryant manager, speaking in hushed, panicked whispers, her voice barely audible. The call was brief. She mentioned a robbery in progress, a gunman inside the store, and then the line went dead. The dispatcher attempted a callback. No answer. Standard protocol kicked in. Emergency units were dispatched immediately. Officers were told the situation was active, the scene potentially dangerous, and lives could be in jeopardy. The arrival at the scene. Within minutes, shortly after 10:55 a.m., multiple Tinley Park patrol officers arrived at the Brookside Marketplace Plaza. Their vehicles pulled up with lights flashing, weapons drawn. The Lane Bryant store was quiet, outwardly undisturbed. The glass windows were intact. No one was visible inside. Officers cautiously entered the store through the front entrance. The silence was eerie. There was no shouting, no movement, just the gentle hum of overhead lights and background music still playing on the sound system. The store itself was undisturbed. Clothing racks still in place, the sales floor seemingly untouched. It wasn't until they moved toward the back rooms that the true horror revealed itself. The scene inside. In the rear stockroom or employee area, officers found 6 women on the floor, bound with duct tape, lying close together, covered in blood. It was a gruesome, haunting sight. The scene was chaotic but also coldly methodical. This was no messy struggle. The execution had been deliberate. Officers called for backup and paramedics as they confirmed the victims' conditions. 5 women were pronounced dead at the scene. They had all been shot at close range, likely in the head or neck. Their names would later be released. Rhoda McFarland, 42. The manager and 911 caller. Carrie Hudek Chiso, 33. A nurse and mother. Connie Woolfolk, 37. A mother of 2. Jennifer Bishop, 34. Healthcare worker visiting family. Sarah Safransky, 22. Recent college graduate with aspirations in psychology. 1 woman, wounded but alive, was found amidst the bodies. The unnamed part-time employee had survived by lying still, playing dead after being shot. She was conscious but in shock, her hands still bound, her body covered in blood. She had suffered a gunshot wound, but it was non-fatal. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, while police secured the scene and began preserving evidence. Lockdown and emergency response escalation. The entire Brookside Marketplace Plaza was immediately cordoned off. Yellow police tape surrounded the parking lot. Dozens of officers from multiple jurisdictions, including Tinley Park Police, Illinois State Police, and later the FBI, began arriving. Police helicopters circled overhead. SWAT teams swept neighboring stores. Customers and employees in adjacent businesses were ordered to shelter in place or evacuate. Local roads were shut down. Schools nearby were alerted, though no lockdowns were initiated. The scene was considered secure, but the shooter was gone. It soon became apparent that the killer had escaped, likely on foot, using the large parking lot and adjacent businesses as cover. The delay between the 911 call and the arrival of police, though short, had given him just enough time to flee the area undetected. The survivor's testimony. As the sole survivor recovered in the hospital, she began providing critical details to investigators. Her recollection was vivid. She described the suspect with precision. African-American male. Approximately 6 feet tall. Medium build. Thick braided hair styled in cornrows. One distinctive braid had 4 light green beads. Wearing a black waist-length jacket, dark jeans, and possibly a hat. Armed with a handgun. She explained how the gunman had been calm and controlled, not frenzied. He seemed deliberate, organized, possibly even familiar with robbery tactics. He had forced them to the back, bound their hands, and demanded money. Then, inexplicably, he opened fire. She believed the killer may have become aware of Rhoda's 911 call, which could have triggered the executions. But there was no obvious panic in his actions, only cold intent. Her survival, and her memory, would become the centerpiece of the investigation. Initial public reaction. The news broke quickly. By noon, local media outlets were broadcasting live from the scene. Rumors swirled. Some early reports incorrectly speculated that this was a domestic dispute or that it may have been gang-related. Others feared an active shooter was still on the loose in the plaza. By mid-afternoon, the Tinley Park Police Department held a press conference, confirming the basics. 6 women were victims. 5 were dead, 1 survived. A robbery appeared to be the motive. The suspect was at large. They were actively pursuing leads. The community was stunned. Lane Bryant stores nationwide closed for the day in solidarity. Churches began holding vigils. And residents across the southwest suburbs of Chicago locked their doors and looked over their shoulders. No one could understand how such a brutal massacre had taken place in broad daylight, in a bustling shopping plaza, without a single person outside the store seeing or hearing anything. The tragedy had only just begun. The gunman had vanished, and the investigation was about to become one of the most frustrating and haunting unsolved mass murders in Illinois history. Chapter 5. The Manhunt and Composite Sketch. In the immediate aftermath of the horrifying discovery inside the Lane Bryant store, the focus shifted rapidly from tragedy to pursuit. A mass murderer was on the loose, armed, dangerous, and invisible. The authorities knew the longer it took to identify him, the lower the chance of capturing him alive. An unseen killer. Despite being seen walking into the Lane Bryant store, despite shooting 6 people at close range, despite fleeing the scene on foot in the middle of a crowded suburban shopping center, no one outside the store reported seeing the gunman leave. No one could describe a vehicle, a direction, or even a sighting. This absence of external witnesses suggested one of several chilling possibilities. He had planned his escape route in advance, potentially even scouted it beforehand. He may have had a vehicle hidden nearby, parked out of camera range. Or he could have simply blended into the crowd with chilling ease. The survivor's description, a key breakthrough. The single surviving victim, though wounded and traumatized, offered the first and most vital lead. A physical description of the shooter, including striking personal details that would shape the core of the manhunt. According to her account, he was a black male, likely between 25 and 35 years old. Around 6 feet tall with a medium build. He had tight braided cornrows and most notably, one braid adorned with 4 light green beads. His voice was described as calm, slightly deep, with no detectable accent or stutter. He was not nervous, didn't appear to be under the influence, and gave no name or hint of identity. This woman's courage in recalling details would lead directly to the creation of the official composite sketch. A haunting portrait of a man whose face has since become synonymous with the words Lane Bryant Killer. The composite sketch is released. On February 5, 2008, just 3 days after the murders, the Tinley Park Police Department released the composite sketch based on the survivor's account. It was distributed to local media, national news outlets, retail businesses and malls throughout Illinois and neighboring states, the FBI and federal agencies. The sketch showed a young black man with a smooth, angular face, a serious, emotionless expression, braided hair, and the now infamous beaded braid. To increase visibility and encourage public engagement, the authorities also released a description of his clothing, a bulletin encouraging the public to report any suspicious behavior, including anyone who suddenly cut their braids or changed appearance. A $100,000 reward later increased for information leading to arrest. A multi-agency manhunt. Within hours of the sketch's release, tips began flooding in. Some came from Chicago residents claiming to recognize the hairstyle. Others came from Indiana and Wisconsin. In the first few days, more than 2,000 leads were logged by investigators, with dozens of detectives working in rotating shifts. The Tinley Park Police Department, now supported by the FBI, the Illinois State Police, local law enforcement from neighboring towns, and federal forensic analysts, all worked in concert to chase down every piece of information. They visited barbershops, hair salons, and beauty supply stores in the region, asking about clients who wore distinctive green beads in their hair. They asked hairstylists whether anyone had recently come in requesting the removal of braids. They even analyzed store surveillance footage from neighboring businesses at Brookside Marketplace, Best Buy, Target, Starbucks, to try to find any image of the suspect. But frustration quickly set in. Surveillance footage yields nothing. Investigators reviewed hundreds of hours of surveillance footage from the surrounding businesses and parking lot cameras. Yet somehow the shooter was never caught on video, neither entering nor exiting the Lane Bryant store. How was this possible? At the time, Lane Bryant itself had no interior surveillance system, no cameras in the lobby, dressing rooms, or back area. Many neighboring stores did have cameras, but angles were limited and coverage was incomplete. The killer may have parked in a blind spot, entered through a direct route, and exited the same way, never crossing any camera's field of view. It was a technical and logistical failure that would haunt investigators. In a modern commercial plaza full of eyes, this killer managed to stay unseen. Profile of a killer emerges. With few tangible clues, investigators worked with the FBI's Behavioral Analysis Unit to construct a psychological profile of the shooter. The emerging profile suggested The suspect was likely familiar with armed robbery, possibly a repeat offender. He appeared calm, methodical, and accustomed to controlling victims. The use of duct tape, the demand for money, and his ability to manage multiple hostages suggested experience. The execution-style murders, however, did not match a typical robbery pattern. Most robbers don't kill unless provoked or cornered. Investigators began to consider that murder may have been the primary intent all along, or that the killer was unhinged or driven by a need for control. Some theorized he may have been rejected for employment at a Lane Bryant or similar store. Others speculated a misogynistic motive, given that all the victims were women. There was even speculation that he may have previously visited that store, possibly casing it or harboring a grudge. But these were only theories. None led to an arrest. Thousands of leads, no arrests. Over the following months, the number of leads surpassed 5,000. Hundreds of people were questioned and dozens of persons of interest were pursued. Investigators even conducted DNA testing on recovered evidence, including duct tape, personal items, and potential touch surfaces. But no match was found in CODIS, the FBI's DNA database. The FBI's crime lab assisted in analyzing ballistics, forensic signatures, and criminal patterns across state lines. But the weapon was never recovered, and no suspect was definitively linked to the bullets used. Eventually, tips slowed. Leads dried up. And the haunting composite sketch remained plastered on cold case boards, grocery store bulletins, and America's Most Wanted reruns. The man with the beads had vanished into thin air. And the longer he remained at large, the more the case grew into one of the most frustrating mysteries in modern American criminal history. Chapter 7. Public outrage and media coverage. The Lane Bryant shooting stunned the public. As news spread, outrage and grief exploded across Illinois and the country. Major outlets like CNN and the Chicago Tribune covered the story daily. Vigils were held. Thousands shared the suspect sketch on social media and printed flyers. People demanded justice and questioned how such a brutal act could happen in broad daylight without capture. Lane Bryant's parent company, Charming Shops, offered support and a reward. The tragedy sparked conversations about mall security and workplace safety, especially for retail workers. Chapter 8. Lingering theories and speculation. With no arrests, theories grew. Some believed it was a targeted hit disguised as a robbery, while others speculated the killer was a serial offender who had possibly struck before. Some thought he may have known someone inside or held a grudge against women. Others suspected he fled the region or died without being caught. Still, with no clear motive, weapon, or confirmed identity, all ideas remained unconfirmed speculation, deepening the mystery. Chapter 9. The Cold Case Years. As months turned to years, the case grew cold. The tips slowed, but the investigation never officially closed. The FBI and Tinley Park police continued rechecking evidence and pursued DNA testing as technology improved. Billboards, news anniversaries, and true crime shows occasionally revived interest, but no arrests ever followed. The composite sketch remained a chilling reminder. A face known but a name still missing. Families kept fighting, holding annual memorials and pressing authorities not to give up. Chapter 10. A legacy of loss and hope. More than a decade later, the Lane Bryant shooting remains one of the most haunting unsolved mass murders in modern U.S. history. It changed how some stores handle safety training and employee protocols. The victims' families continue to honor their loved ones through community events and remembrance. Though the killer's identity remains unknown, the case lives on through the efforts of law enforcement, media, and the public who still hope for a break. One tip, one lead, one name to finally bring peace to those left behind. If you have information. Anyone with information about the Lane Bryant shooting can contact the Tinley Park Police Department's tip line at 708-444-5394 or email lanebryant.tipline@tinleypark.org. Even the smallest tip could be the key to solving one of the most haunting unsolved mass shootings in recent U.S. history.